What an introduction.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the flowers, Louise. And it's a privilege being here, despite all the... We were not able to come here a couple of weeks ago, and it was really sad not being here. But it was always very nice, the introduction that you gave us, and what Carlotta was talking about, Maria Jose. I think this industry needs a kind of a change. And I think Rachel and I, we were both at the Sustainability Summit from the IPA at Frankfurt Book Fair 2021. And there was Richard Sharkin, and actually everybody was talking about how this industry can become more sustainable. And I was really surprised. My first question to you is, who has a background in printing? Printers, any printer? Everybody? One printer, I know you. Thank you. The rest has a publishing background, yeah, so you understand how you print books, and I really thought, and I haven't known Richard by then, so I know that he's a voice of the industry, but he was standing there and he said, guys, if this industry needs to change and want to become more sustainable, we need to change the way of production. We should stop putting books on pallets, ship them across the world, put them in the warehouse, ship them from the warehouse somewhere else, coming back, and after a couple of years, 30% of these books are thrown away. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know this. I was quite surprised. Since then, I think we touched on a lot of different insights. We know that some parts are more than, some books are more than 30%, some less. But in general, and I think that's what Carlotta also said, I think paper is a big thing. Yeah? So we need to look at how we can reduce the amount of paper that we can use. And he said print on demand is a topic that could help us, or a process that could help us to be more sustainable in this industry. So it is really about how print on demand could differ this, and I thought then, wow, we should do something different. And then I was talking to Rachel and said, Rachel, let's think about something, and we started actually with the initiative launched at the Future Book Forum. Thank you very much for the introduction to this as well. It was the Future Book Forum 2022 where we launched the initiative, and this is when we started with the Publishing 2030 Accelerator.
So the Accelerator was born out of the idea that every time we get together, we have the same conversation, we want the same thing, and we always sort of say, how do we do it? And we all look at each other, and we go back, and we do our day-to-day work, and we come together at the next book fair, and we have the same conversation. And I think for climate, we just don't have the time. So what we wanted to do was to think of, what are the key areas where we could do a deep dive? Could we get passionate people from the industry together and think of a study, a pilot, think of a calculation? How do we kind of do this, move that conversation, and actually create things such as white papers, tools, outputs, discussion forums, where the industry could take it, use it, and accelerate those conversations. So what we wanted to do was a one-year concrete project. This is getting away from the talk into the actual action, and think about what we could actually do. And we decided there were three sort of work streams that we kept getting conversations around. One was, it actually was born out of customers will pay more for an environmentally friendly book. Not sure about that, but we thought, okay, what does that look like? What is the carbon footprint of an individual book? The second was around distributed printing, print on demand. How does that work? What's that going to be like? And the third one was really about, what does sustainability mean in a day-to-day work, right? So how do you account for sustainability? And let's be honest, is there a trade-off between sustainability and profitability? And so we had those three work streams, and we got some individuals together who were passionate, who had resources, and who wanted to do something. And we developed a manifesto because we're fancy, and we thought, yes, we're going to do it. But it basically outlined the kind of approach we were going to take, which is, you know, we're not going to solve all the knowledge gaps, but what we will do is move fast, move agile, and keep moving the action on.
Yeah, I think what we were very surprised about the feedback that we received by then from the market. Yeah, so there were a lot of people who said, "Wow, that's great." Yeah. I started with the Future Book Forum actually 2014, and it was just an event where we thought, okay, we bring innovation to this quite traditional-minded industry. But when we prepared and we presented our ideas to a broader group of people, and they all said, wow, we love it. Yeah, so you can see here, these are the associations, these are the people that are supporting us. I was really surprised when Yo from the Korean Association came and said, yeah, that's great, we need this. And it's, hey, that's not a thing that is, it's European, yeah? So it's a worldwide topic that we're addressing. And you see here all the publishers that we have, the printers, and we got lots of support, even from a company like bookshop.org, yeah? So I know that also here in Spain, he's doing quite a lot of things, but it's all about how can we collaborate together and how can we work in this sector to make this world a better place. And I quite like this, what we did. Yeah, so, and I think that's what COVID gave us. COVID, for me, was a change of how we work, how we communicate. One thing is, everybody knows since then how to use a QR code. But on the other side, it's also something we are used to work together across countries, across time zones. We meet in Teams or Zoom or whatever is there, but it's one topic, and that's what we did. So this is one picture that we had. It was one of the meetings where we gave an update to our team. It's really how can we bring our ideas and thoughts together to bring things forward, and I think that's what we have achieved. So the first topic was then the carbon footprint of a book.
So I think we know what the mission is. Books are important. They certainly need to continue to be part of our society, but we want to make them in a way that the planet loves as well. And there's a load of different things that we could be thinking about in terms of environmental footprint of a book, right? It can be inks, it can be water, it can be lots of different things. This one focused just on the carbon impact. And there are three main critical issues. The first is there's a lack of reliable, granular carbon data. That's hands down across the industry. And it's not just our sector, it's every sector. The second one is a lack of available resource. Every time, and I've been doing this for a long time now, every time I talk to a publisher, this is an add-on. You're dealing with COVID, you're dealing with Gen AI, you're dealing with business models, you're dealing with rising paper costs. There's a lot going on. This is an additional thing to think about. You don't necessarily have the data, but you may not have the time, resources, or capacity to be thinking about this. And the third one is a lack of industry standards and a common methodology. So there are a lot of studies out there. Each of them are designed differently on a different set of assumptions, on a different set of bases. There's no point in a publisher in Australia saying, I have a carbon footprint of this. A publisher in the Netherlands saying, I have a carbon footprint like this. We need a common set of ways that we think about this, a common set of assumptions. So our aim was to think about how much a print book impacts the climate, and we had some requirements. First off, it had to be inclusive and it had to be international. It had to be something that a small publisher who might not have any data could use, or a big publisher who has loads of data could use. And basically, you'd get a more accurate number or a less accurate number. We also needed it to be international. There is absolutely no point in us calculating this in a myriad different ways, right? We'll confuse ourselves and we'll confuse everybody else. We wanted to drive the right behaviours. This is not about solving every knowledge gap. We could be here for the next 30 years. It's hard to calculate carbon. I always make the joke, and it's very female-orientated, it's like childbirth. I always thought childbirth was like a scientific process, and then it's mystical when you're in it. Carbon data's a bit like that. And it's about acceleration, right? This is about how do we get a number which is good enough, right? It's not going to be perfect, but good enough to move forward, to have sustainability at the conversation, as we've heard, when you're thinking about commissioning a new book, when you're thinking about what materials should go into it. And there were two things we wanted: a headline figure. We wanted that number, whether it's 1.2 kilos, 0.5 grams, 7.9 kilos. We wanted a number. We also wanted the climate impact of the supply chain, so we wanted those carbon emissions. And there, I've included content creation, because we shouldn't forget, as publishers, there are energy that's put into creating stories, to illustrating, to editing, and that needs to be reflected in our supply chain as well. The method identified 6 parts. You need some core information. This goes back to the inclusive approach. You know what your books, how many you're going to print, you know what kind of materials, is it hardback, is it soft cover, and you know the projected sales. From that, you can generate a number using this methodology. And we've identified these emission sources. And when I say emission sources, what I'm talking about is the energy used when going through that process. So content creation, how the energy is used when you're writing a book. Paper production, very heat intensive. What's the energy impact? Printing, transport, and end of use. We've put end of use in there as well because books, no matter how many times they're read and reread, will eventually finish their life, and we need to account for that as well. And so the vision was this. You can scan the QR code, it does work. We managed to sort of think of getting a number, and we can get a number. It's reliable enough based on the assumptions that we've got. And the idea is that can we get it to a stage where we might be able to communicate this? And there we need to start thinking about minimum standards. How good is the data in order to start adding it to the metadata of a book, for example, where there is already a field where we could add that data tomorrow. We also wanted to sort of think about the communication, and so we were testing things. What does that look like? How do we make sure that we're transparent, but we're also not greenwashing? This isn't a leaf. This is a nutrition label. This is just saying, hey, this is what it is. It's not saying this is a sustainable book and this is not a sustainable book. And so what we've done so far is we've published the methodology. It's free. You can get it today. Perfect. We've also got a free tool. Now, this is super exciting. In about, hopefully 2 months in Frankfurt Book Fair, the free tool will be available. You can take it tomorrow. It's an Excel spreadsheet. You can plug your numbers and it will return you a number on a book that you might be thinking about publishing or have published. And the whole point of that is that you can then have a conversation with your editors, with your sales team, with your marketing team, and you can sort of start thinking about, okay, if I change this, if I did that, what kind of impact it was. And the whole point is to bring sustainability onto the discussion table alongside sales or marketing or any other function that we have as standard. So what's next? We want to accelerate the industry standards. Takes 20 years, can't wait that long, let's do it. We're going to be testing and learning with the tool. We want to hear feedback, we want to know, is it inclusive? Does it work for an Egyptian publisher as well as a US publisher? Does it work for a giant like Elsevier, or does it work for a very small company as well? We want to know that information. We need to evolve and update the methodology. This is a rapidly growing area. Carbon data is getting more sophisticated. We're starting to get a lot of better data. Great, how do we update that? What kind of forum does that look like? And we want minimum data requirements. How do we get it to a stage where we might think, actually, we'd be comfortable communicating that externally? The second one is that we want to drive supply chain action. No one gets to net zero by themselves. What we do need is absolutely everybody to be moving in the same direction, admittedly at their different paces. So what we're thinking about is that this will drive upskilling of data capabilities. If you know what data you need to plug into that tool, chances are you might start collecting that data. You might be looking at what that means for your workflows, how do you integrate it? And the second one is that we're actually going to see if we can adapt this methodology and get a sector approach. Can we estimate, for example, the sector of the Spanish book market? Can we get a number? And it doesn't really matter what that number is. What matters is what's the kind of dynamics behind it. What part of the value chain is actually working really hard? What part of the value chain might be doing stuff that we don't even know about? And how does that move forward? Jörg.
Yes, thank you very much. I want to say the initiative was targeted for 1 year. Yeah, so we launched it at the Future Book Forum in May 2022. We launched actually the first white paper, the outcome, at Frankfurt Book Fair from the first work stream. so last year. It was at Frankfurt Book Fair last year, and an impact on this on the carbon footprint of a book is where it has been printed. So this is what you can see, this is what I mentioned earlier, this is what Richard was referring to. So the traditional way you see here is printing books somewhere in China, and then you ship across the world. So it's a lot of traffic traveling for books, and then finally they come back to a warehouse, then they sit there for another couple of years, and then they will be destroyed. And it's very nice that you said data, so we should think about what is actually the amount of books that we need. And what I see still in publishing is that lots of publishers think that digital printing is a kind of copying, yeah, so it's not really serious, yeah, so we are a serious business and we need offset, yeah, that's what we are used to have since Mr. Gutenberg, but it's changing now, really. And look at this, what are technologies? And my vision is actually, I would like to what we like to have is a kind of a network across the world of data, highways with storages where books are stored, and you can pull the file when it's needed, and then you print it to where your customer is. So it has lots of benefits, and to these benefits I would like to come to. It's how can we reduce the carbon footprint and publish global and print local. So what we thought in the beginning is our idea is we wanted to create a digital printing network because we believe in the printed book. Yeah, so there will be a printed book for the next years. So Jesus Badenes told me on Monday, you have increased by 10% the last years in Spain, books. Yeah. And it's not only because of the price increase, it's also people buy more books. Yeah, so a lot of people buy more English books, but books, printed books, and it's very nice what you were referring to. Printed books is still a very, very important part of our life. So we wanted to develop a kind of a minimal viable product. How could this work? How could this network look like? And we were focusing on professional book printers. So how could this look like? A software that would be able to do this. So we didn't want to create something new. As I said, it was a one-year project across the industry, and we wanted to use what are the capabilities or what is available in the market to mix it together to our group. We have an advisory team that looked at this, so they helped us to get this done, and I think that's very, very important. It's not something for, I work for Canon, yeah, of course. That's my company and I love it, but what this actually is, it's an industry initiative. It needs to be open for everybody. Yeah, so every customer, every publisher, every book printer should have access to it. So it's not something for us, it's for the industry. So how can we, I would like to democratize print on demand. Elsevier, Pinch & Random House, you have your suppliers. You work with Ingram or you have CPI and you ship your books across the world. You don't have to have it. Yeah, but I was talking to Kathy Bale from New South Wales University the other day, and she said, yeah, we do this as well. We get emails and then we print our books in Sydney. Yeah, because Australia is a very Western country-minded society, so they get lots of books from other parts of the world. So it makes sense to think about this, but it needs to be open for everybody, what we're creating. When we started, and you saw the picture of our community that was working once a week, not every, but in the beginning we were working once a week, set together, and we have 5 groups. Yeah, so here you see the 5 groups that were very important for us. So data and input, file transfer, print service, logistics, and leading principles. So we worked on this and we found out what is really important, and we believe that there are lower emissions. We can reduce the carbon footprint by our initiative, and to have books globally available. And it's very important to reduce the inventory. Yeah, I couldn't believe that this is really the case, that are sitting books, and it's not only the books, it's also the assets, it's the money that's sitting there. And what I've seen, and this is why we have also so many customers from our side as the printers in Spain, because I think in the time 2014, 2015, there was a big economical crisis in Spain, and publishers were not able actually to put the money in the warehouse. They thought about, oh, there must be a better solution, let's print this on demand. And thanks God, this has changed a lot. We have lots of customers or book printers in Spain that are using this. So I give a little bit of insight what we did in our initiative. We had two face-to-face meetings. One was in London during Book Fair last year, and we were talking about what are the pains? What are you really suffering as a publisher? It's of course it's the high cost of warehousing. It's long shipment lead times. When you order your books. And it needs a couple of days, the traditional way of producing books, gathering together, that's, it's not a quick order that you can have. And if you like to work together with a publisher, with a book printer, you also have to think about, how can I manage such a print service provider? And how can I work with them? So the administration costs. So it's not really easy. And it was a very nice question that Louis also asked me. How can we overcome this high costs of print on demand? The question is, what is high cost? But I think what is the benefit when we look into the whole production chain, from the creation to the distribution, the cost becomes a part of this. And there is also no reference of local prices. So how can you find out what is the cost for a book printed on the Philippines, or maybe in Southern America? That's what we wanted to overcome. So this was very important for us. And what are the gains when we're working together? And in the beginning, we were actually working with Cloud Printer on the project. They have such a solution. Or they were interested in such a solution. How can we increase revenues? And I asked Jesus on Monday, why have you done this in Spain? Why are you increasing your book sales? And he said, you're doing a very good marketing. I think you are very good in promoting books better than probably other countries. In Germany, it's decreasing. Or some numbers from the UK, they're suffering. But I think you're doing this right. And this is how can we increase revenues, and I think this making books more available in the market globally also increases the revenues. You can be much quicker. So you could print the book from the win of the European Championship on Sunday. You could have a book today or tomorrow. So that's very, very quick, so you can respond much faster. And this is what actually this market needs. And you always have to think about myself. So how do you feel, and what are your intentions? How do you consume, and how do you cooperate? So we are working actually much faster than always this long way of going the ways that were always been there. So how can we reduce inventory costs, but also lower emissions, give a positive image to this market? So it was very nice that you asked me, talked about my daughter. I always think about my kids. So what will happen to them? I will be gone in a couple of years' time, so hopefully it will be more a couple of years. But I think we always have to think about what comes afterwards, and we have to bring people also to this industry where they think, it's a very, very innovative industry, and how can we bring data to this? So the requirements for our printers, what we think is important is professional book printing skills. These are the printers, this is what the printer needs to have. They need to work in a print-on-demand environment, so a book of one should be possible, how to manage data, packaging, logistics, environmental performance. They should look after where do they source their paper, so it's important. But also having a social responsibility. How do they treat their people? How do they work with their customers, and to also have business ethics in this. So for us, and this is what is very, very important, is a standardization. We were working with dter on this. Yeah, so you know dter, Onyx. We were already working also in the package 8, where was the print-on-demand capabilities in the new bundle. We need to have these processes. How can we use the data? And it needs to be for everybody. Yeah, it's great that you are driving this, and you are here as the big publishers from Penguin Random House and Elsevier, and there is Macmillan, and there everybody has a focus on digitalization because it also keeps down the costs. But we would like to have this for everybody. Yeah, small and medium-sized publishers, they would need to have this as well, and to have also economically sustainable market. So we need to have a more diverse market, and this needs to keep there. That's what we think is very, very important to have with such a network. The user experience at the end is very easy, so that's what we thought, okay, if we have then such a network initiative tool, invoicing and taxing, so this is what we think is crucial. You know, you do all your working online, buying online, and it needs to be the user experience is key of the success of such a tool that you can use. And where are we today? We have delivered the white paper last year at the Future Book Forum in November. We're still looking for some partners. Yeah, so it's how can we now test this? I'm talking now to another company that is interesting to work with this network. But at the end, and that's what I said here, it's actually it's not a company that should focus on earning money. It's a company that delivers a service for this industry. It delivers a service for the publishers worldwide, and it's more a kind of a B Corp. That's what we think about. So it's not a Canon or an Elsevier thing. It's something that this industry should own. So that is our proposal after these 1.5 years we were working on this. But I think what is very important, and who has a financing background sitting here? I think this is a kind of a reflection of the market, where we are with this.
So it was kind of funny when I've been out and I talked to lots of different people. I talked to production people, I talked to comms people, I talked to dedicated sustainability leads. I rarely talk to the finance director. Now, love what you love about our industry, we make a big impact, but at the end of the day, the business reality is that we need to be profitable. So, the question I always got is, how do you do that, Rachel? Often, some of these sustainability choices are perceived to be more expensive, a sacrifice, a regulation that we have to comply with, rather than an opportunity. So, how does finance kind of factor into this? And essentially what we had is, we're never going to get anywhere in terms of a net zero goal unless we can find a way that sustainability can also be an opportunity and can also help us grow, develop, and have a vibrant and diverse industry. So our aim was, okay, let's figure out, let's test some of these assumptions. Are sustainable choices more expensive? Are the business incentives within our sector actually aligned with sustainability? Because I kept getting heard from various parts of the supply chain, yeah, printers, you just want to publish, you just want to print more. Oh, printers, you just want more, jobs, you'll do anything for a lower cost. What exactly are the incentives? So what we did is we thought, okay, let's interview the CFOs. Looked at Bloomsbury, Elsevier, Planata, Springer Nature, Wiley, and Wolters Kluwer. And we asked them the questions. And we got some really interesting insights. So the first one is, we are seriously committed to net zero. Every finance person, every CFO says, we have net zero targets, and we have a governance program, right? The management is accountable for delivering on those targets. These are not soft little words as they were maybe 10 years ago. These are actual commitments that have accountability behind them. The second insight, which was quite interesting, is that we tend to think of sustainability as a trade-off, a black and white choice. This book's sustainable, this book's not. This, packet of rice is sustainable, this packet of rice is not sustainable. And the CFOs definitely didn't have it. They said there's a spectrum of choice. And actually, what you need to do is to start thinking about what levers can you think about right now, and what levers might you think about in the next midterm or long term. And so this idea of, hey, there's one paper choice that you need to have, there's one ink choice that you need to have, may or may not work for everybody. There isn't a standard predefined way to get to net zero, and the CFOs needed the flexibility in order to make sure that sustainable choices now might not be sustainable choices in 10 years, but that you're on that trajectory moving forward. The third one is about prioritization. You can't solve everything. Basically, what we needed to do, or at least the CFOs said, was that this is a long-term goal. And it's really long-term, right? If you have a 2050 net zero commitment, chances are you're not going to be working at the company that has the 2050 commitment right now in 2050. But what you will do is start thinking about, actually, what do I need to make, what decisions can I make now, what decisions can I make in 2025, 2027, 2030, and actually start prioritizing them. And I think that's a really interesting one. The fourth one is that we're not going to optimize our way out of this. You need innovation. So the idea that innovation's the secret weapons, that's on business models, it's also on formats, it's also on product materials, it's on production workflow processes. So there's optimizations that will help us get to some point, and it will get us close to some of our targets, but it's not going to get us all the way there. And number 5 is that you need to be talking to your finance department. So when I finished this white paper and we had the presentation, I invited the CFOs to come to the London Book Fair. None of them had ever attended a book fair, and we walked in, and they're the ones that signed off all the stands. They looked at their stands and said, I've never seen it in real life. These are people who are not necessarily thinking of our day-to-day workflows. We don't necessarily think of them as a partner here in the conversation. But what's really important is that they're the ones that will give us the resources, whether that be time, whether that be a department, whether that be full-time workers, to actually deliver on some of these net zeros. They're the ones that will be ones looking at investing and thinking about that long-term strategy. And so finance is really a key partner that we need to start bringing into that conversation. And so the final recommendations was that I think we need to start thinking about the business case for sustainability. This is not wish-washy, this isn't green leaves, this is really, there is a business case here, and it's becoming very, very scientifically proven that accelerating your progress on net zero is good for business. You will increase profit, you will increase opportunities. The second one is that we have to bring sustainability into the decision-making, and finance helps us do that. The carbon calculator tool that I showed you, you can have a conversation about it. Even if it's a conversation, I like that number, I don't like that number, at least it's on the table. At the moment, it's not necessarily on the table. Basically, prioritize areas where you can influence. If that's, FFC or accredited paper, great. If it's not at this point, that's okay. Think about your LED light bulbs. You can't solve the world, but it's sort of what do you do now, what do you do tomorrow, what do you do the day after? And it's about embedding sustainability into accounting reporting. GDP is the way that we think about economies, and even the UN are trying to change that, right? You can have a massive GDP, doesn't account for anything in terms of environment or what you're doing to the planet or what you're doing to your social systems. What we need to do is also start thinking about how do we bring the ESG into that reporting. And if you're a large organization, you're under even more regulation in terms of the EU corporate responsibility reporting initiative. And there we have to really start putting it in there. And so a lot of the big companies are like, yeah, we need to start reporting on this. Climate risks, what does this mean? And so it's a board level conversation, and that's where we need to get to. And the other one is start innovating. We can't think that paper, and it's really not a question of paper versus digital in my mind. It's really about how do we start innovating to better serve the customer needs? And are we thinking about that? And do we have a culture within our sector where we're thinking about innovation in the same way that you see in digital or other sectors?
The Publishing 2030 Accelerator is an initiative that we have started to bring sustainability to book production. At the IPA Sustainability Summit at Frankfurt Book Fair 2021, Rachel Martin and I stand together, and we were thinking about how can we make book publishing more sustainable and bring it to life with passionate industry people from different parts of book publishing. In more than a year, we had several online meetings and we were focused on specific topics. Our topic was a distributed printing network.
So my role in the Publishing 2030 Accelerator was to lead Workstream 1, where we were looking at the carbon label of an individual book. And what's interesting about that is that we started thinking about a label, how to put it on the book, how to inform consumers. But actually we did most of the work was figuring out how we were actually going to account for it.
On the second workstream of the Publishing 2030 Accelerator, we worked on the concept of a distributed printing network for book printers and for book publishers. The idea was that we really point out what is that concept, what are the challenges publishers are facing in this context, what are the opportunities we can address with such a distributed printing network, and what could be the next steps to develop them.
So we embraced the Sustainable Development Goals, which have a very strict deadline by 2030. And to make progress, we launched an initiative which is called the 2030 Publishing Accelerator. And together with Richard Sharkin, I was kind of the chair of that initiative, and it has produced 3 concrete results within a year, which is quite an achievement.
The initiative was set up several years ago, and my job is to encourage, exhort, to lead publishers worldwide to think deeply about CO2 emissions, damage to the environment, wastage, all the things that are in our control if we manage our businesses better. Better for the world and better for our industries, allowing growth, innovation, and all the things that really matter in the 21st century. How do you evaluate the costs of changing from the traditional printing and distribution model to a new print-on-demand and distributed selling model? It's very easy for accountants to estimate the cost of a book, the print cost of a book. It is very hard to estimate the overheads of moving that book from one warehouse to another, from the printing machine to the warehouse, from one warehouse to the retailer's warehouse. And that retailer might be in Australia, might be in the United States, might be in Argentina. And the books will go on ships or sometimes even by plane, emitting CO2 all the way and using margin, gross margin, which gets eaten up by these overheads.
We developed a white paper where we put in all the findings of the group. It's a status quo of our discussions, and it's very important for us to have that white paper to share it with the broader industry. The findings of the 3 work streams can be found on the International Publishers Association website for download. Take a look, learn more about it, and feel free to contact us if you want to get involved or want to have more information.
I think this is, just to summarize this, and I also wanted to give you the voice of Michiel and Richard. They were supporting us massively on the way. There's a QR code, you can download the white paper on the site from the IPA. All 3 white papers have been published. I made a mistake. I wanted to get them shipped from Munich to here, so they are still on the way. They should arrive here tomorrow, so that's the problem of not printing on demand. But I think what we have here is a very good example of collaboration across the industry. It is something where the print service providers, book distributors, solution providers, and the book publishers have committed to do something. And we were very pragmatic. I also like this. It was Peter Kraus from Clef. He was at the Future Book Forum 2022, where he said, and that's what we really did with this initiative. We need to work together. Yeah, so across this industry, there is much, much more we can do. And it's not only this silo or this silo or this silo. No, it's all of us working together. And we haven't, that's what also Maria José said when we talked about this. There will be legal requirements. They are needed, and the governments will take decisions for our industry. So we need to make them aware of what is actually needed. How can we help them? How can we do this? And also, Peter said at that time, we should switch to print on demand. Print on demand is not for everything. Yeah, of course, there will be still Michelle Obama's books across the world. It doesn't make sense to print it digital. But there are so many, and it's what you see. It's an increasing number of titles of books, yeah, and it's a decreasing run length. So it doesn't make sense to print all of these books every time, put them in the warehouse. That's what we need to have. And that's what I also very much like is people like to shop locally. Yeah? So we have an initiative working with the Federation of Swiss Publishers in Switzerland, and we're bringing print back to Switzerland. Yeah, Switzerland it's like an island, like maybe the UK with borders since a couple of years, unfortunately. But this helps to be faster because people would like to have your solutions, your books, and that's what people would like to have. And what I think also this industry needs, and when you talk to people from this industry, they are suffering to get young talent. Yeah, how can we make this industry more attractive, and how can we work together probably in a broader scale to make the publishing industry not compared to Google or Apple or Meta. No, it's the publishers, and it's a great industry. I really fell in love with it. Yeah, so I started actually 10 years ago, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity that we have to bring this industry to another level. That's it, actually. Do you have any questions? There is some passion, you see, so we're more than